Do you ever feel swamped by information spread across various platforms? Think about trying to streamline customer data, podcast links, and AI insights without lifting a finger. That's where the MEM API comes in. It not only organizes your data, but also connects your tools, enabling them to work together and update automatically. And today, I'm going to show you how the MEM API can turn your digital clutter into a smooth, efficient system that enhances your workflow and responsiveness. Now, let's get to the video. So today what I want to do is walk through the powerful functionalities of the MEM API that allows you to create MEMs, append to an existing MEM, and even batch create MEMs when you want to. And these can significantly enhance how you manage and organize information. So if you go to the documentation page, what you'll see here is you have all the different details of how to use the API. One of the most important things about this is making sure that you get a API access token, which you can find in flows. Or if you go over here to settings and you click on setup integrations, you'll see here that there is an API key option. And that's how you get access to that, because that's going to basically determine how everything else works together. So here you have a couple of different parameters. The most important aspect of this is just the endpoint URL, which is the primary thing that you're going to use. If you're more advanced in terms of your coding knowledge, some of this stuff can be really useful as well. And then you have the ability to batch create MEMs. This isn't necessarily something that I've done, but this is actually great for handling large volumes of data. You can create up to 100 MEMs in a single request, which is great. For example, if you want to import data from other platforms or tools, for example, you could batch create MEMs from a list of customer feedback entries, ensuring that they're all captured efficiently. And then, of course, you have the append to MEM. And the two that we're going to go over today in this video are going to be the create a MEM and append to a MEM. And funny enough, in order to append to a MEM, you first have to use the create MEM function. So let's first look at an example in terms of how we append links. So in this case, what I'm doing is I have an Airtable database where I have podcast titles along with URLs, and I just want to create a link where I have just a list of links of all the different podcast episodes. So that way I don't have to go searching for them. So just so you get an idea of how this is all set up, I have a Airtable base here where you can see there's a title of the episode, there's the guest name, and then there is a URL. And then I have a checkbox that says append to MEM. And why do I do that? That's because what we want to do is we want to filter what we actually send to Zapier, where this is all going to go to work. So let's get into Zapier now and look at how we actually set this up. So the first thing that you have to do is decide what your trigger is going to be. And in this case, it's a new record in a particular field. And you can see here that I've specified the Airtable base, what table it's in, and specifically what view it's in. And when you run a test, you'll basically see that we get records. Now, you can see here right now, it says it didn't find any new records. It's possible that it might take a second to update, but there you go. You can see now. So we've got a new record here. Now, in order to take the two different outputs, which are the URL and the title, and combine them into one. To combine the title and the URL into one output in Markdown, I actually used Zapier's AI tool to write a bit of code and said, basically, I want you to take the title and the URL and output it in Markdown. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just retest this. There are several ways that you can use the append to MEM API function. In this case, we've just used this, but there are a bunch of different use cases where it can be really useful. For example, once I had a client and we needed to import thousands of tweets into MEM, and rather than having to copy and paste all of those, we wanted to create a single MEM that had all her content in one place so that we could analyze it. So now let's actually go into the second use case, which is the creating a MEM. So one of the things that I realized, and I've done a demo on this before, which you can see on the channel, which is saving ChatGPT responses to MEM. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to say, Donna, tell me about the concept of network thinking in 3 paragraphs. And this is with custom GPT that I built just for my own purposes. But what you need to see here, more important than what this response is how this was all set up. So the other thing that you have to be able to do in order to make this work is you have to configure everything here. And this is where we use the create MEM function. So what I had ChatGPT do was actually write this code for me so that I had it inside of there. And all of this basically gets set up using your API key. So you can see here, again, you want to make sure that you enter things properly. If you haven't seen it yet, watch the other video on how I did this. So then what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to that interaction, and we're going to take that response that we just got. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, save this to mem. And what that will do then is it will use the mem API. As you can see, it's starting the action, and it will create a mem from this. So the one thing you have to do is you have to wait here to confirm that you want to create the mem from this. And once you confirm it, you'll see a little dialog box, and you can see here that it even gives us the mem right here. So we basically created this mem using ChatGPT. So one of the things that I found frustrating with ChatGPT is how often I was copying and pasting things to mem when I needed to be able to use ChatGPT. So for example, in this case, this is something that allows you to save responses to mem rather quickly. So let's go back to our overview here. So there are a couple of things that you can do. The first is that you can create mems. The second is you can append content to an existing mem, or you can batch create mems. And there are several different use cases, but the most important keys here are, one, knowing what your endpoints are going to be for appending and what your endpoints are going to be for creating mems. Now, one thing you see here is that there is a mem ID. So when you actually run this step, what you'll see is what it'll do is, instead of appending to an existing mem, what it will do is it will actually create a new mem. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace this content with something like new mem test. And then what it will do is it will give us a ID that we'll use if we want to append. So you have to do this first in order to make this work. So this ID right here is the one that you're going to want to use when you decide to append to a mem. And so then what we would do here is we would replace this URL with our endpoint for appending. And then what we do is we'd replace the ID with the ID that we just got from inside of Zapier. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and put that ID back in there. And you'll see here that new mem test has already been created. And there's nothing in here, but let's just say we want to add some content. I'm going to say add content to new mem. And this time what it will do is it will actually append to that mem that we just created using the create function. And you can see here that sometimes it takes a little bit, but if we go back over to our mem, and you can see here, whatever I typed shows up in here. So just to recap, the most important things are the basic things that you can do with the mem API, which are to create mems, append to an existing mem, or batch create mems. When you are appending, it's important that you use the correct endpoints. The same thing with create. You also have to create a mem first in order to get the ID that allows you to append. You can use this in different scenarios, like saving responses from ChatGPT, building a collection of links, for example, from an Airtable database like we just did, and a whole bunch of other things. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below.